Wow, I only lost 13. You know what? That's playable. Unironically. You don't know why I don't weave at RB as well? Because think about the time I save from holding a button and tapping the R button. That doesn't really seem competitively fair. And I'm not at a point where I can't ignore that, where I can ignore that for free. I'll do it. Like, right now, I do it on Hundo Glitchless because I simply don't care about the category. There's not enough people playing. So I just do it, because why not? But for other categories that I actually care about, that I'm willing to push my times on, and that I'm pretty sure that at some point someone will be interested enough because the category is actually interesting, because it's an unrestricted category and it's one of the most unique routes in the game created by B-Dog. It's like the 5th iteration of All Bosses Unrestricted. We finally landed on one that's both really hard and extremely interesting. There is no way this category will not see play. So I'm not going to do that to people in the future. If they want to compare times, but they see that I just saved 10 seconds on them for free on Ravenbeak, like, why would I do that? The fact that I shattered Noyazaki's Ravenbeak time with Turbo is a bit of a disservice. Because he's Noyazaki. And also Marsh. And also B-Dog. And also R-Candy, you know? And it's somewhat argued that I shouldn't care. I should just do it. But I care. Because that's just the kind of person I am. I'll use it to save my hands, not to phantom save time. Although recently I have been making a decision to change my ways on Ravenbeak. So instead of electing not to turbo weave, I'll simply make it weaker by holding R for longer, so that less beams come out. I tried that in the AB NMG time, and I got a time that's relevant compared to my manual weaving, so it works out. I wonder what could have prompted that change. I mean, okay, so I don't know if that's a real question, but in all honesty, it happened because of plasma skip routing. And when that came out, I kind of like fully realized what was going on. Nice. So the thing is, I can't mash faster than my weave. It's very, very difficult to mash faster than even 12 Hz weaving. Very, very difficult. What I will say though is that there are people that can temporarily exceed 12 Hz weaving, but they burn out quickly. And sometimes it averages out to a better time, which is what you see from Noya and Marsh in their boss rushing. Same with other runners like R-Candy, who previously had the best RB mash ever. B-Dog before him. Fallen before him. And then at some point there was Yokura-san as well. Finally! And I don't want to do that competitive disservice. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, I'll never be tired of having this conversation. There are people, when they get approached with questions like these and conversation topics like these, and it eventually lands on like, why do you use turbo or something, right? There are people that don't want to answer that anymore, besides like a snark because I need it, or because it's allowed, because of the stigma that's around it, right? People will always say, you know, turbo should be considered task. Turbo is not indicative of human play. Right, stuff like that. It's always there. I'm not afraid to talk about it though, because I know that it's a predominant question, and the point is to educate about what the benefits are. So in my case, right, I use it because I cannot play the game at the quantity that I do if I don't have it. But the thing is, I also completely understand the competitive question, which is that turbo just saves time if you can't mash at the same level. I can. For short bursts, just not for hours a day, right? So you'll see me weaving on warriors manually, for example, because I'm able to. This is a really good Catarist, by the way. Like you'll see me in these positions where I'm weaving very well on things like warriors, on like the bots, for example, and it's all manual. And if I didn't have noise suppression, you'd hear it. I'd just have noise suppression because my computer fans are very loud. Hopefully now it's starting to make sense why I elect not to use turbo in particular on like Ravenbeak. Unless I specifically say, to hell with it, I'm going to do it because whatever reason I might have, right? That was a really good Catarist, Jesus Christ. But yeah, like even during the tournament, right? Sonic Orochi, I believe, was the one who would consistently say it when he was casting matches I was in. and the question, like, whenever my uses of turbo came out, right? And what he said was very true. I don't use turbo to get an advantage. I use it to save my hand so I can play and compete at this level. That's what's important here. And if people don't want to accept that, then by all means, you don't have to consume my content. If people don't like talking about this and they don't like to hear me talk about it, then by all means, you don't have to consume this part of my content. But I'm always going to be up and honest with everybody. Like, even today, this morning, while I was running my errands and doing some stuff for the family, like, I just got really bored. So I looked up some old content from Dread, and eventually I landed on some of the videos that Oats made about the turbo discussion way back in January and December. Like, listening to them again after it being 6 months since I last saw the VODs, like, it's good stuff. Like, those videos are actually pretty good. They do a good job at explaining for both sides, like, what the positives and negatives of the function are, and that there should be a willingness to accept the positives and also accept the negatives at the same time, but understand that the positives are more inclusive. It's good stuff. It's really good stuff. Unfortunately, there are people who will watch those videos and come to the complete wrong conclusion. I mean, have you seen that comment section? God almighty. The video also, like, those videos also talk about how the old discussion was, like, disgusting and just not good. And, like, actually full of shit. I'd honestly love to have a server discussion on that again in current time. And hard police. No, that's not gonna happen because there's no need for it. Like, I wonder what the conversation would be like now that more people are educated. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, the flow of those conversations change based on who's active at the time. I'd say right now, the flow of time has made it so that we have more people that are understanding. So obviously, the conversation will be a lot more simple in that there will be less monkey shit-flinging and more understanding and handshaking. But whatever. I think the damage is unfortunately irreparable. It'll take a very long time for that damage to heal. But hopefully, if and when Oats returns to Dread, if and when Arcandy and the other big names, Carter Freak, for example, if and when they return to Dread, we'll see the general public will see that the game is in a much more positive light. And I do not doubt that there will be points where someone will look at my times and say, this guy only has #1 because he has turbo. And to that I will say, I can triple your time with my feet, so whatever. Yeah, exactly, right? Let's handshake on these details that we're sharing with each other because both of us have a point. Healthy, productive discussion, moderated well, less dismissal, right? That would be nice. Eventually, we'll reach a point where we can have that sort of discussion within the speedrunning community as a whole. And I feel like, I remember from, when Summoning Salt did a Mega Man video, or a Rockman video in particular, and how I believe it was the overseas community, the Japanese community, had allowed auto-fire for Sigma or something? Or whatever that boss is called. Because it was just fucked up, right? So they just allowed it. So I feel like we're already in the right direction with exposing to the general public about stuff like that. It just makes sense. Unfortunately, Dread was supposed to do that and make a progressive stance and showed that the community was open to inclusion and that it is a good thing if other communities could do the same thing. And then they fucked up. And we lost a bajillion people who no longer have an interest in returning. It is what it is. Right? We just have to deal with the aftermath. It is what it is. There's no going around it. So all I can do is just be faithful to my own beliefs within the game, or within the speed game rather, and how I like to conduct myself, knowing that I use auto-fire or knowing that I use turbo. And just be honest with people. And I think that that's something that needs to be done across all sides of this conversation. Just be honest with the other side, yeah? Because I also get this feeling that in that old discussion, a lot of these people they just did not want to talk to each other. They didn't want to actually talk. They just wanted to say what they wanted to say. I also kind of plan to get to a point, because all my times right now are beatable without turbo if I try. And I get like, I grind good early games, and I don't mess up the major stuff. I don't have a single time I can't beat without turbo right now. I'm kind of thinking about doing that. Like, I'm genuinely kind of thinking about doing that. But maybe I'll take it a step at a time. I don't know. Turbo is necessary for the well-being of any speedrunners in the game. Mashing is so bad for your wrist. So I'd actually say that that's a dangerous stance to take, Agario. Not that I think that you're saying it in this way, but the way that that reads is it's rather dangerous. The point of allowing turbo is not to claim that you should use it. It's that the option is open for you to use it. That's what needs to be at the forefront. So for example, when turbo was at 20 hertz, if you wanted to compete with someone at your level who uses turbo, you needed to buy turbo. It had to happen. Now, we've lowered it to 12 hertz. It's no longer it's not a necessity anymore. 12 hertz is surpassable. If the other runner does not weave with turbo, it is easily beatable if you can weave. So it's a competitive option. That's where it should be. It should be that healthy. As soon as it becomes a matter of necessity, it is no longer healthy. And that's where you get these inane arguments between these people who are like, why are we making this required? And then the other side says, because it's good for my hands, or it's because it's good for everyone's hands. Like, mashing is not a good thing, but you can find a form that works for you. Many people have, and they're not hurting yet. But it's also the same thing, right? Like, speedrunning is inherently a repetitive activity. Inherently. It is very likely that many of us will develop wrist issues in the future. Not because we're mashing our hearts out, in particular. We're doing something that literally falls under repetitive stress. So if you can find a form that's ergonomic and works for you, then that argument no longer applies. So when people preach that turbo is a necessity because it beats mashing and mashing is bad, you're deliberately ignoring the side of the community that can function without it. And that is not a good thing. That's extremely dangerous. Because no one wants to be told what to do, number one. Right? That's just the fact of humans. We don't want to be told what to do. So when someone tells us, you gotta get turbo or you're gonna lose time, right? Like, right? Or you gotta get turbo because your hands are gonna suffer. Don't tell me that my hands are gonna suffer. I know my hands better than you, right? I could play this game without turbo. Can I play it as much as I do right now? No, which is why I use turbo. I have a reason, right? I've thought about it. I've experimented with and without it, stuff like that. Yes, the option is necessary, but we should keep it as an option. Yeah. See, wording there is really important. Which is why, also, the older discussion was not a good discussion. Because most people were just saying what came to their head, and they just ignored their fucking wording. So it just came across as huge shit-flinging. Very, very huge shit-flinging. And the people that actually had articulated opinions on either side of the discussion were ignored to some extent because of the shit flinging, right? How do you put out a fire? And for many, the answer is get some water, but for some people, it was create a bigger fucking fire. Like, why? You know? It's an interesting case study in like how to destroy a community. Actually, that discussion is actually still in the Dread Discord. You can go, it's in the archives. You can pull it up. If you wanted to read it, you'll see why the community is where it's at right now. Dude, I read it last year because I really wanted to, I really wanted to see why this community ended up being not as fruitful as it should have been. And then it became immediately obvious. Immediately obvious. I was always on the side of turbo being allowed, at least at a humanly achievable. Yes, I agree. I completely agree with you. 1,000,000%. If I could run at 10, I would run at 10. Unfortunately, there is no controller that's like something I like that runs at 10. They're either shit or not actually 10. And I'm very lucky that the 8BitDo Pro 2 has a firmware update or a firmware down patch that goes to 12. I'm very, very lucky because this is like the only controller I'll see myself running the game on. I'm super lucky. Otherwise, I'd probably just run no turbo and I would play for less. It would take me longer to get to the potential that I've reached now, but I would still reach this potential for sure. I don't need this shit to work. I just need it to work more. Honestly, I feel like even when people were handshaking on 15, I felt like there was something inherently disingenuous about handshaking at 15. Because, like, mashing at 12 per second, that's feasible, right? But mashing at 15 per second? Have you seen the amount of people that can mash out gold skip without storms? There's not many people. For that, because there were people that could mash at 15, right? It gave ammo for the people who wanted 15 to say, well, someone can do it, so it is humanly achievable, that's what you wanted. Not really, though. Because most people can't. And they could develop the skill, they could learn it, but I'm willing to wager that many of those people don't want to do that because it hurts. It hurts. I've tried. Like, I'd say my single mash is pretty good. I can't double mash for my fucking life. Probably because I've never learned how to do it correctly, but also because this controller is simply too fucking good. Like, I've spoken with other people about this before when it comes to D-pad mashing and stuff, right? Like, B-Dog recommended me a controller that has a bad D-pad because it makes D-pad mashing a lot simpler. For example, right? This D-pad that I have on the 8BitDo Pro 2, you have to feel it to understand. The actuation force is very high. So whenever I try to D-pad mash, you know, I just start shit flinging. So it doesn't work for me, unfortunately, which is why I usually single mash. My mashing form for weaving is extremely dangerous. I would not recommend this shitty single mash form that contorts my hands all over the controller so that I can both aim the stick, tap R, and mash the Y button at the same time. I'm pretty sure none of you could guess how my hands are like when I do my mashing. For Even Beak Phase 2 in particular. You could not guess it. Guaranteed. But it's something that I do at times in categories where I refuse to use turbo weaving. Because I feel like it's a necessity. Yeah, exactly. You have to rework. You have to find what works for you. I've done my exploration. I found what works for me. Is it good? No. But like, I know that's where I'm at. And because I know that's where I'm at, I'm able to sympathize with those that are better than me at it and have concerns about things like 15, 12 in weaving, and oh god, 20. Or in the beginning, uncapped. Although with uncapped, it was more so that the general assumption at the time was that the game could not process more than 20 per second. That was what was initially thought. So uncapped wasn't actually uncapped, it was 20. So that makes sense. It's just a lot of shit that you have to consider and make a formulated opinion on. You can't just inject your beliefs in it and expect to have a fruitful discussion. You actually have to understand the other side. There has to be some level of compassion in this discussion. Because it's competitive. There's always this human element. I don't know, man. It's a good thinking like experiment in retrospect. As someone who plays at the top level with turbo, it is something that I cannot ignore. It's a conversation that always pops up in my head. Always, always, always. Do I usually voice it? No. It's somewhat rare that I talk about this point ever, because I know that it's filled with incense, if that word works here, right? I know that it's filled with preconceptions from a lot of people, right? But one thing is for sure that we can say, preconceptions should never impact current in this context. There is no shame in being the first to do something out of the well-being of your players in an era where we have the information to make an educated decision. that benefits people. So as long as we have the information, as long as we have a fruitful discussion, or try to, as long as we all get what's going on, right? When we all get it, then whatever comes out of the vote, whatever comes out of the poll, the discussion, it's all good. As long as we all get it. We're moderating ourselves here, which wasn't actually the case back then. But right now, I'm willing to bet that any discussion had at this level would be moderated in the sense that we'd be moderating ourselves. And if that's not the case, then I think that it would have to be enforced that way. Hi, Spino. Run's going good. I mean, this run's going good, but we're reaching the hard part, so I'm about to start bitching about the game. I agree, Scotty. I agree. I think the current mod team is very, very good at just not being that. And you know what I mean when I mean that. You know what I mean. You read the last conversation. You read the first one, right? You know what I mean. This mod team is very, very good at not being the issue. And that's not even like shade at the old team in terms of individuality. They were all trying to do what they thought was best. But the way that the discussion was handled, they only were looking at what they thought was best, not what the general community as a whole thought was best. Let me just slap this wall clip real quick. Shit. Okay. We still made this. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's also a thing. Alright, let me finish this first, and we'll get back to this conversation. Madge. Here's something that I hold as a personal belief, right? I don't think it's necessarily true, but it's something that I hold as a generalization. Any staff team for any game-related community should be concurrently playing the game. Now, that's my belief, right? Because that's what I would do to myself if I was a staff member, which I am. So as soon as I stop playing the game for an extended period of time, I'll probably step down. That's just how I am. What I think the actual truth of the matter should be is the person who is a staff member should have full knowledge of the game. That's enough. That's what I think it should be. They don't need to keep playing, because some games, you know, yeah, it's like that. So what I can say for confidence, and I think Scotty agrees, considering what he said there earlier, was that the old mod team wasn't really like that. I hate this game. Yeah, it's like a balanced team on a game that has patch cycles. If you're not familiar with your game, don't be on the team. Because how can we trust people? Okay. How can we trust people to make a decision for players if they don't play? Or if they haven't played extensively before? Ideally, they would keep playing. Ideally, they would continue to be invested in the scene, in the game, in the community. Ideally. And when the staff team can't even do that and they're made to moderate something, it's not a good look for anybody. Oh, shit? Pause, champ? I need to annihilate this bot. Or this Z57 guy. I had to fuck him up. Good stuff. Okay, we can finally fucking play the game. What were we even on with the earlier conversation? I don't remember anymore. But like, end all be all, I am not afraid to talk about it. You know what I find interesting though? Given the conversation topic from earlier, I noticed that my viewer count did not go down. Which is actually kind of surprising. Because I expected a charged discussion like that to result in some, you know, I just lost skew. That doesn't actually matter. But I'm hoping what that actually means is that I conducted my opinions in such a way where no one felt like they needed to leave. Fuck! Fuck! It's fine. Does anyone really watch chat for non-spicy takes? True, I do have some crazy takes. On at times. It's true. My takes can be quite, yeah. But, I mean, sometimes my takes are like that on purpose. Because everyone who's talked to me for more than like an hour knows that I love to talk. Regardless, right? It depends entirely on what kind of talk it is, of course. But, like, fruitful discussion, pardon this word, is like my social kink. You know what I mean? Like, I just love having good discussion about stuff that both parties are interested in. It's good shit. Dude. Fuck.